Okay, monsters versus aliens. This one was probably one of the poorer DreamWorks ones. I think I saw it not in 3D, and you can tell it's obviously designed to be in 3D. A lot of it centers around Susan, a woman who is going to get married to her local weatherman, who's, I'll just say a jerk and fairly self-absorbed. And on the day of her wedding, this meteor rock hits. She tries to run away, but she can't. And also during her wedding, she begins to glow. She tells him, "Oh, I'm glowing," and then of course she becomes 50 feet tall. Ironically, her wedding dress actually still fits her for the most part, even though she's probably become like 9 to 10 times her beginning size. Then her hair becomes jet white. She's then captured by the military and put in their monster program. At first, I couldn't figure out why the holding cells were gigantic, because if you just found out someone just became 50 feet, would you actually have a giant cell designed to hold that person? She makes her way through and gets to meet the other monsters. A doctor, or a mad scientist, who kind of made Chamber-like from the Fly, but became a giant cockroach. The missing link, who's a merman. Bob, who is the Seth Rogen bizarre mentally handicapped blob character, because he has no brain, he actually forgets how to breathe for a while. As well as a giant radioactive grub named Insectosaurus. I say giant, he's like 300 feet tall. By far my favorite character in this whole movie. Because he's just, there's really no expression because it's a giant grub. You probably think, okay, they're the monsters, right? What about the aliens? Okay, well apparently the meteor rock is going to be needed by the head alien, who is essentially kind of like a squid person with 4 eyes. So what does he do? He sends a robot down. A robot that looks kind of like the blob Bob. But when you first see him, like, okay, it looks kind of like a giant robotic grimace with 1 eye. The president goes to visit him, played by Stephen Colbert, and of course, I don't know why they always want to do this, but they always seem to play, I think it's the Close Encounters of the Third Kind song, you know, and then all of a sudden he goes right into, I think it's the theme from Beverly Hills Cop. Entirely bizarre. And then they realize, you know, deflector shield, we can't stop this thing. So the person who heads up the monster program goes, "You know we're going to fight those aliens? How? Monsters." So then the group of monsters end up going against to fight the giant robot. And they really can't do a whole lot because the doctor, even though he's really smart, is still a cockroach. And they're fighting a gigantic, like 300-foot tall robot covered in a deflector shield. Of course, except they defeat the first robot, and then realize that, you know, humanity's never going to actually love them. Probably because Bob is a glob of goo that can dissolve things by ingesting them. One's a giant cockroach, the other is a merman, and the last person is a 50-foot tall woman, and also there's also a 300-foot tall grub. So the alien decides he has to do one thing. He has to get on there himself. So he flies on his spacecraft, and then begins to attack, you know, Earth again. He actually captures Susan and extracts the mineral from her, and then begins to finally do his full plan, which is to make a bunch of clones of himself to then take over the planet. Okay. The monsters break back onto the ship and realize that Susan is now regular size. So Susan, being regular size, doesn't have any sort of monster powers to help them out. They make it to the main computer on the super ship by disguising themselves as the clones. They look nothing at all like the clones. But I guess the clones are mentally inferior, therefore they don't think that these, you know, like, it's like a gob of hair gel in a suit. They get past all that. Then it comes out of the security code. And enter that in for the main computer. It's like DDR. So the Roach Doctor apparently is an amazing dancer. Deactivates that, which then begins a self-destruct sequence, which is 6 minutes. I don't get why it's 6 minutes. I don't get what the Easter egg is for that. Of course, then as they're all trying to leave, Susan then decides to try to go one-on-one against the alien bad guy. She eventually gets her powers back. And of course, they end up destroying it. And then of course the grub gets attacked early and gets taken out, so he's not there for the main fight. He then becomes some sort of giant butterfly looking thing. And it ends with someone mentioning, well, you know what? There's a giant radioactive snail in Paris. But then of course they fly out to Paris, which is where Susan wanted to go for most of the movie. This, like I said, this was probably one of the worst Dreamworks we've seen in quite some time. I tell you one thing, this was probably ridiculously impressive in 3D. You can tell it was designed to be shown in 3D. But the monsters really didn't fight the aliens that much. I mean, they kind of fought a robot, and then they stormed the main fortress. And then Susan, in non-monster form, fought the alien, like hand to hand. So, yeah, I can tell for kids probably a lot better, but most Dreamworks stuff actually kind of works for both. It works for children, as well as adults. This one, while it was entertaining, it just wasn't up to par with what Dreamworks normally kicks out.